thanks for joining us and for allowing us to broadcast this live and to record it for anyone else who can't make it today. So hi guys.
Hello. Hi.
I'll have to ask you all about your experiences as judges and everything, but we are mainly here today to discuss what makes a good character to cosplay. I do have a list of submitted questions, they're already here with me. But we're also open to questions from attendees on the Zoom. We can't see them here, and anyone who has joined or will join as we go, we just ask you to leave your camera off and your microphone muted, just so that you don't come up on the recorded screen. But if you do have a question, you're welcome to type it into the chat box and we can read them out then. We might not have time to get to every question. This is life, but we will do our best, definitely. So guys, are we ready to go?
We're ready.
Absolutely.
Oh, lovely. Brilliant. Let me see. I'm going to first ask you guys because I get this question a lot. How would you describe cosplay? I might put that one to Jay and Emily first.
You go first?
Yeah, I'm bad at definitions. You go first.
No. What is cosplay? Cosplay to me, anyway, is, I suppose cosplay to everybody is a little bit different because there are multiple ways of cosplaying and bringing characters to life. But the main thing is you're bringing a character to life, to reality, you know. So whether that's, I don't know, like for us, it's we make our stuff. So we are creating it. It's the creative aspect as well. But we know we build everything, we sew everything, and we bring that to life in that form. But again, it's a definition that is very loose and interchangeable depending on what way you want to cosplay. Have you any other input there, Silent Bob?
I think it's defined as wearing clothes outside that you wouldn't normally.
Yeah. A bit of escapism, really, you know?
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. And what about you, Nola? Would you agree with that or want to add?
Yeah, very similar. It's expressing your love of a fictional character who often you either relate to or inspires you, and then, you know, bringing that to a place where you express that love with other people. That's the main aspect of it. And then of course there's the creative side, which you can fall down a rabbit hole very easily of just wanting to create every aspect and learn new skills along with expressing your interest and bringing the character to life. So there's lots of different aspects, but yeah, it is pretty much bringing your loved characters to life and doing it with like-minded people.
Lovely. And I have to say, I love your cosplays today. Would you guys like to introduce us to the characters that you're bringing to life today?
Sure. I'm doing Hermione Granger from the Deathly Hallows, the Battle of Hogwarts.
I'm dressed as Thor from Thor Ragnarok.
I'm Cassandra from the Tangled TV series, same as the Tangled movie, pretty much.
Lovely. I am happy to say that I recognised all three of you, and I was hoping that I got them right, and I did. So that's brilliant. So let me see. How has this year been for you guys? That's probably a good question to also start off with. Go ahead.
Very, very slow.
What's a year?
Yeah.
It's been a year and a half of this already. It doesn't feel like that long.
And in terms of cosplay, how?
It's been hard to kind of, you know, stay, like we would be constantly pushing our costumes during a con year, you know, every couple of months. But then with COVID, it was, you know, we started off the year strong with making loads of costumes, but then obviously that all fizzled out, and we kind of kept going for the first start of the year. And then as it kind of came towards like maybe, I don't know, September, October, it started to kind of go, where are we going to go with this stuff? We can't keep exactly creating and storing, because by the time the con season comes about, you're going to want to do a different character, because let's face it, we're addicts, you know. We see characters, we want to continue making more and more and more and more. So it kind of phased out a little bit for us. We started doing more commissions, which was a good way of getting to create without having the pressures to keep or to wear the costumes. So a couple of there was a good chunk of months we were spending on one particular commission, which kind of kept us occupied.
Yeah, we spent most of this year working on jobs rather than stuff for ourselves, because you don't want the cons to come back and then you have 8 things there that you haven't used, and you know. So I mean, most of our year so far was working on a film for a crowd down in Cork, an Assassin's Creed movie. So we made the main costumes for that. That took us the first 3-4 months of this year.
Wow, yeah. Well, I would call that a good productive year then.
It's different. It's different. Yeah, it's a good start. Yeah. Very different from
just different, as you say. Yeah.
And we wouldn't normally spend that long on a job because if it takes too long, you're not getting your worth out of it either. But I mean, what else are we going to do these days?
Oh, well, that's lovely. And what about yourself, Nola? How has the year been for you from a cosplay perspective?
It was slightly the reverse. That the minute cons kind of fizzled out, my motivation for making my own costumes kind of went out the window. And I'm usually the type of person who makes stuff about 6 months in advance. I like the minute I get an idea, I'll make it and I'll be ready well in advance. I'm not a con cruncher at all. I won't be there at 3 a.m. in the morning the night before. But yeah, so it fizzles out a bit, and then I focused on different creative pursuits, hobbies. I do writing and drawing and other things. And then towards the autumn, oddly enough, I found motivation again, just through watching new TV shows and finding new characters. And this costume was one I made the end of last year, beginning of this year, mainly because I found a new TV show and I was like, oh, I have the motivation again. But yeah, it's so hard to keep the motivation going when there's nowhere to go with them. You can put it on for a photo shoot and that's great, but it's in your own yard and then you have to take it off and you're like, what did I do this for? So
that's interesting, because I noticed twice now you've kind of said that the social aspect of cosplay is quite important to you. And then as Jay and Emily are saying, the creative side it depends on, I suppose, what you get out of it, and different people do it for different reasons, I suppose. Yeah. Oh, well, I'm delighted that we've given you a reason to put your cosplays on today then. Lovely. And let me see. Obviously, Nola, you've just said that this is a relatively new outfit for yourself then. What are your new additions that you'd like to show off at your next convention?
Very few, to be honest. There's this one, and I'm currently working on I have the pieces for, they're kind of just sitting there at the moment. Carmen Sandiego from the Netflix TV series, and a version of Poison Ivy from the Harley Quinn TV series. But they're mostly just, the materials are kind of sitting there. I just have to once we get a con saying, oh, we're going to happen in this time in 2022, I will probably start working on it because then I have a deadline. But from now, they're kind of just sitting there. So.
Well, I'd still count them. And what about yourselves, Jay and Emily? What are the new additions to your repertoire?
Still working on jobs, to be honest. Down to the last few now. I'm currently making some Mandalorian armor for a guy in Dublin. But I have started back into working on my Doomslayer now as well. But that's very ridiculous amounts of detail, so it's very, very slow.
Yeah,
especially when you're only an hour or so every now and then,
I'm working on just finishing up a cyberpunk cosplay that I started last year. Get to actually wear it next week, well, a version of it next week, not the full version. But and also, I suppose I'm working on another Witcher character, so that'll be something. But which?
And your dress.
Oh yeah, I'm also probably going to take a little bit of time off of making cosplay stuff. I am making my wedding dress, so it kind of time is ticking now. So I need to kind of get started on that.
Question your deadlines. Oh, well, that sounds great. And so I suppose to get to the subject at hand, you're after naming out loads of characters there, some that we'd be very familiar with and some not so much. I suppose what made you choose those characters? So maybe pick one there from the list you just said there, and what attracted you to them?
For me, it's very, very simple to define in that it's not definable. There's just a thing that clicks when you're watching something or playing something that's like, yeah, I'm going to just do that. Sometimes it's a specific piece that you feel like would be fun to make, and the rest comes from there. But most of the time, it is just a feeling. Or you just, I want to do that. That's it.
Totally. What about yourselves? Anything to add there?
I'd be kind of similar, I suppose, to Jay, that it's kind of like, it started off kind of going maybe like, oh, I love that character or whatever. But a lot of the time now it's, wow, I want to make that costume. I want to I want the challenge. I want to see it in real life. And, it's just something about it that just makes you just go, I need to cosplay that.
It's part of the reason why plans change so much, because 3 weeks later, when you actually could start in this, you mightn't feel that way anymore. You know, you might have finished the game, or the movie is in the back of your mind now, or whatever it was.
And it takes so long to get everything made, then that you're on to the next thing, as you say. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about yourself, Nola? What attracted you to Cassandra, for example?
That was more a case of I'd spent about a year before the lockdown came along making a lot of costumes, not like massively big builds, but like a lot of small ones. And I had actually been taking kind of a 6-month break from just saving money and stuff before the March that everything shut down. So March was actually going to be my next convention, and then everything shut down. But I totally just sidetracked off what I was trying to answer there. Yeah, so what attracted me to the character? Yes, it was related. I was looking for something wasn't even looking for something. I was watching the show and I was like, I related to the character. I thought she was cool. And it is like they say, something kind of clicks in your head about like halfway through what you're watching. You're like, I'm going to make this. But the motivation does have to stay with you. You have to like it enough that the next week when you're going shopping for materials, you still want to do it, because you're spending your money and you're actually committing time to it then. But I was mainly just looking for something simple as well. And because literally just wearing a tunic, I was like, I'm just going to make that because it's going to be an easing back into making any bigger stuff that I want to do next.
Lovely. That's, I suppose, the time frame probably does help when it comes to choosing these ones as well. So I suppose that brings me on to one of the other questions that's here now. When you are looking for the next character to cosplay, so when you're happy enough, you've worn this one, are there any elements that you personally look for? So Jay, you mentioned cool armor. Is there a particular element of an outfit and tunics and everything? Is there anything that you particularly are drawn to?
Well, a thing that comes up a lot is if you have a really big, long build, there's usually a part of it you absolutely despise. So you pick something as much the opposite as possible afterwards.
Yeah.
I describe it as, back in 2000 when everybody watched Lost and couldn't understand anything and their head was wrecked from it. They had to go sit down and watch a few episodes of Scrubs afterwards to ease off, So a lot of the time for me anyway, it does go that if I do a 3-month build, I'll try and do something really quick afterwards. But the reality sometimes is just, particularly in Ireland, you've probably seen before the lockdown, there was maybe 30 or 40 cons on every year. It was way too much. You didn't go to all of them, but even if you were going to a small number, that was still a large number of cons. So a lot of the time it's just down to what are you going to do with that? Different types of events will draw you to different characters as well. Mm-hmm. There's no point in going to a gaming event as an obscure TV character because most of the people there won't have a clue what it is, and there's no interaction there. So sometimes that kind of pushes things as well, where you've a specific idea what you want to do for a specific thing, and sometimes the time it lines it up for you.
Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I suppose I guess it's all, I suppose now it's very if I was to enter a big competition, I'd be looking at a character that has a lot of mixed medium, that I could do some foam work, that I could do some sewing, that I can do some, various different aspects. But if it's a con where it's more casual and nice, I'd be looking for something far more comfortable and fun. And, so I guess for me, it would be very dependent on what event I'm attending that I would judge what I want to kind of make next.
And the purpose kind of the one that, yeah. Lovely. Yeah. And yourself, Nola, anything that you particularly are attracted to in a character?
Yeah, very similar. Thinking back now to when cons were on, it was often dependent on the con. You would have often a few characters you're looking at, different types, maybe like an armor, maybe just sewing. And then dependent on the con, maybe even who's going to it, if there's other people going as characters from the same show, if there's going to be a meet, a shoot, that kind of thing, that would also influence even if you have 1 or 2 cosplays being in pro at the time, which one you'd work on more. It is very much dependent on what cons you're going to as well. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
Oh, lovely. And I suppose down to the logistics of how long is it going to take to make this character, and as you say, the kind of purpose that it's for. Are there any kind of character traits or personalities that you would look for in, like, and I'm trying to make this a bit general, I suppose, as beyond yourselves, are there any personality traits that you think would make a character a bad one to cosplay, or is that what makes it fun?
There are plenty of like ones that you wouldn't really like. I know, for example, the Tiger King. There was a lot of hype when that was around, and a lot of people wanted to cosplay. But in my head, that's kind of a big no-no because it's not an appropriate character to cosplay. So I think if you are looking for something to cosplay, you know, go for someone you have a connection with, whether it's like, oh, I think they're really funny, I think they look cool, I think, you know, something got to do, like there is a feeling you get with the character, no matter what it is. It's like, oh, that'd be so fun to cosplay. Just, you know, kind of wait for that connection, I suppose.
It depends on the person as well. And I think we're a good example of that, where I have a very narrow focus of the kind of things I like to do. They're all stoic and partly grumpy, but still a sense of humor, very much like myself, you know. But whereas Emma will have a much bigger range, and not to take it away from her, but sometimes she's literally just done stuff to copy the thing I'm doing and match it.
Yeah, you know, because it is a thing when you are cosplaying with someone, you know, you don't have your page, you do kind of want to match in one sense. So like if he's really passionate about something and I have no idea what I want to do, I will look for a character that I would relate to and cosplay from that universe, kind of thing.
And like our friends are the same. They literally only cosplay in groups at cons, so they will pick solely based on what everyone else is doing. So it is different for different people.
That's interesting. And I suppose sometimes that works out quite well, like with The Mandalorian, you know, there are just perfect characters that fit you really well. And what about yourself, Nola? Is there any kind of stories or personalities that would like you particularly like animated characters or anything?
For a few years, I think it started off with, since my very first cosplay, which was Xena, I have just gravitated in general towards liking broody brunettes with swords. That's how I say it. And that's just, it does end up that I do cosplay a lot of them. Now, not all. In the previous years, I've done ones that are animated and they're very different characters and much more bubbly. But yeah, that has been kind of a stereotype I've just ended up in a lot. But like also it lined up once quite well with, like, I barely started playing the Witcher game, but the guys were cosplaying from it, and you know, I was like, well, I may as well do this character, you know, because I do like her even though I don't know a lot about her, but that was the encouragement in the situation, to do a group cosplay. But yeah, it is definitely, dark hair for a long time because I have a lot of hair naturally and it's easier than wearing a wig. So that was a long time, but in more recent years I've gravitated out of that field a small bit. I think I've done more animated shows than real characters in recent years, which is just a coincidence, really.
Brilliant. And I suppose I'm wondering, if there's any ones that you've ever given up on. Have you ever started a cosplay and then said, no, actually, this isn't worth it? I realise this is a sensitive question.
How many did you start last
year? I don't want to talk about it. There have been. I started maybe last year. I started on Mad Moxie, but then, as I said, the motivation kind of went because I wasn't going to be doing anything with it. There, you know, even photo shoots, especially doing a Borderlands type of character, you can't exactly just go out and take photos of it because it's like, you know, that's not the type of like what you're getting. You need to go into a studio. So I did halt on that for a while. I'm sure I will get back into it. I have some of the fabrics for it. I did reuse some of those fabrics that I had bought on other costumes, but yeah, like there are some that like I might like only really this year that I kind of start that I'd be like, I'll put a halt in it. Like my cyberpunk, I'm only picking it back up now because I actually have an excuse to do it versus, you know, like our house is literally covered in cosplay. So there's only so much you can store and there's two of us. So, you know, it's kind of like there needs to be a balance. And sometimes you just have to say, look, I need to step away from that one, maybe work on something more, you know, fitting or whatever that you can actually kind of thing.
For me, it's literally only once ever. There was a group project that was started last February. Sorry, it wasn't even actually. It was after lockdown started. When everyone thought this will be done by the end of the year, surely. So a group project was started. There's about 20 of us involved for the end of the year. And then when the realization kicked in that this was going to be the long haul, everyone kind of drifted away from working on it. So that's the only time I think I've had anything sitting around unfinished.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't worn any of this before. I made this helmet last year to make a pattern for my Etsy store, but I think that's it.
Yeah.
You still finished it, I suppose. Fair play. And what about yourself, Nola? Have you ever any ones that didn't make the cut?
Not really. Again, up until the lockdown started, I would power through and I'd finish something quite quickly. You know, I wouldn't work on anything else. I'd work on one thing at a time and I'd finish it before I start something new. But yeah, during lockdown, there was a costume I'd started at the beginning of 2020 and I literally made about 70% of it within a few weeks. And then the minute like lockdown happened, it was like, there's going to be no cons for the next 5 months. I was like, well, and I just let it sit for like 6 months. I only finished it at the end of 2020 because a new season of the show was coming out. And I was like, I should do some photos, you know, but other than that, nothing really gets left. Like even the two I have sitting around at the moment, it's just my process has changed with lockdown that I don't work solely on one thing. I dip in and out of it. Like even Cassandra at the moment, her leggings aren't finished. Her sword isn't finished. I will finish them, you know, it's not been set on aside completely, but it's just everything's much slower because there is no deadline.
Yeah. That's, I suppose, and is it ever really finished? I suppose you can always be adding to it anyway, can't you? So.
That is always fixing things.
Well, I hope there was nothing about those characters particularly that made you quit with them. As you say, it was probably just more outside influences. We did have a question that was asked there. So beginners, as in what things should they look out for? Are there any things that would be recommended for beginners, a particular silhouette or a particular material that might be easy for somebody to start out with?
Well, I think choosing a character that you love is the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe don't, if you're starting off, maybe don't go for like, okay, I'm going to make Master Chief from Halo if I've never, you know, done like foam work or whatever, if you want to kind of build. But I suppose, I guess, picking a character you love is going to help you drive your creative process. Even if you want to buy costume, it's still choosing a character that you love and getting to bring that to life is going to be the most rewarding for you. If you are looking to start off making, maybe choose something, you know, along the lines of like, if you could cut out clothes that you already had and use them as patterns and, you know, kind of help create that way. But I think the most important thing is someone that you love is going to help you really start your cosplay journey.
It depends on what background people come from as well. Some people are just naturally creative. Other people, they just struggle with it, and that's fine. Everyone has their own way. I know people that make everything. I know people that make nothing, and they're all just as happy doing it, you know. So I think it does depend there. The only advice I ever give people is to not make excuses not to do it if you know you want to do it, you know.
That's a good one. Anything there to add, Nola?
Kind of just said it all. Yeah, if you find a character you love enough, that will drive you to do it. Like, to be fair, yeah, if you have a character you like and they have a big armor and they also have a casual look, to start, it might be easier on you to help just like resource from your own clothes, from charity shops. You can alter stuff. That's often an easier like let into the more like foam work or anything like that. But yeah, really just find a character you really like and that will give you the motivation.
That's brilliant. And I suppose, are there any sort of franchises or stories or anything that you kind of see people go to when they're beginning? What are the kind of go-to places for inspiration?
It's always comic book stuff.
Yeah, comic book or anime, depending on like your interests, I suppose.
You need a whole group of people with both hands to count how many Jokers or Harleys you see at every single con, you know. And to be honest, that stuff is good. to start with, because it is quite basic, and it's also really recognizable. Where a lot of people say it doesn't matter if people recognize your stuff, but
it does make it better.
The social aspect,
Nice.
unless you're 100% introverted, and given that this is the hobby defined really in bringing introverts out of themselves, I don't think, it just doesn't work that way. Everyone gets caught up in the social aspect once they get into it, and being recognized helps a lot. So for newbies to do something simple and recognizable, it will help them catch the bug much easier. With most things, the first experience is going to define the rest, really.
And I suppose I've spoken to other people in the past, and we've said it doesn't matter the skills level that went into it or how much time, whether you spent a week on it or a year, if it's recognizable in some way, once you enjoy wearing it, I suppose, isn't that the ultimate kind of goal of cosplay?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah. Definitely.
And I suppose now that might bring us on to your roles as judges, which again I'm interested in touching on. Would that matter to you as a judge? Could, I suppose, the type of material, the quality of materials that went into it, or is it more just the imagination that went into it?
It depends on the competition.
Yes, for the most part, as a judge, that's not really your decision. The competition will define what's been looked for.
So if we were judging like makers, like a big makers competition, you will be looking at like different techniques, you will be looking at fabrics, you'll be looking at like what mediums they use and stuff like that. But if you're just kind of, doing a more overall generalized competition, it would be a completely different judging process. Plus a lot of the time we are allocated categories in which we would judge by, and categorize people inside those. So it would literally depend on the competition.
Yeah, that stuff is important as well, because people, to be fair, they do have their own definitions of it. You will often see a competition that's labeled as, make your own costume. And everyone has their own definition of it. Some people will enter where every single little bit, they might have sewn their socks just to make sure it was made. But to somebody else, the fact that they painted on their pants, they also made that because it's not the way they bought it, So you have to work with that as well. But for that reason, the actual rules of the competition do tend to really dictate that. Usually it's percentages is what you're given as a judge. Much percentage had to be done from scratch. And most conventions would do what they call, these days it's more called a masquerade. Years ago, the masquerade was just a name for all of them, but these days it's more kind of the, just wear what you're wearing, go on and do your thing, and don't worry about how it was done.
And I suppose, as when you're just out at conventions and everything, would it matter, as in, I personally, from my experience, whenever I'm at a Comic Con, it has never mattered to anybody, as you say, whether or not somebody has made their socks or whether somebody has just used ones they bought, somewhere else. And it's more just when you see that somebody has put effort into it, isn't that, I suppose, what matters in a general sense?
Well, I'd use the same attitude I use for everyday life. It's like, unless I'm trying to learn something off them, it's not my business how they put it together.
Yeah.
That's their business, and if they're happy with it, that's not going to negatively impact me.
Yeah. And it's a bonding experience. So if you're just generally out at a convention, and especially if you see someone who's cosplaying the same character as you, it's a huge bonding experience, because you're like, oh my God, you're me, and then you get the whole fun aspect of it. And it really, nothing matters in that sense. It just, it only matters when you're entering, say, like, different categories in a competition or whatever. That would be the only determinant. But in general, it's a bonding experience. So it doesn't matter what way you put a costume together, because it just matters that you're all doing it together.
Yeah. And would you agree, Nola, that's kind of...
Yeah, very much. It's definitely dependent on category. In a general sense, it doesn't matter, but yeah, in competitions, it depends on the category. Makers, performance, beginners, etc. You're just taking into account what you're meant to be looking for, depending on the category, and then you go from there, really. But yeah, in a general sense, definitely doesn't matter.
Yeah. Lovely.
Nola started her career by just doing cartwheels on stages.
Performance was my area. Like, I had no idea what I was doing costume wise. I literally didn't not know what I was doing, but it was my performance aspect that I brought into competitions more than the actual crafting aspect at the beginning.
Again, I suppose that's the interpretive nature of the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose now, just coming into the final section there, are you guys keeping your eye on any new releases for inspiration or anything? Are you excited about anything that's coming?
I don't know.
No. I think it's more of a thing that's, for now, it's going to be what I stumble upon, you know, and what I kind of, oh, that's going to look cool.
Yeah.
But as of now, no, I'm not really focused on anything, not until I know I'll be heading to con season and again. But, you know, I feel like we still have a little bit of a while yet.
Yeah, there is that. Lovely. And I suppose I'm just looking forward now to seeing who you guys come up with next, and I suppose who we see at Comic Cons. Hopefully we have loads of more beginners that we can see kind of coming in and everything as well. Lovely. Any final thoughts to leave us with, everybody?
No, I think you covered it pretty well.
Yeah, just go with the character you love and just go from there. Like, pretty much.
Doesn't matter what you do or how you do it, just do it style. Lovely. Well, guys, thank you so much for that. We're looking forward to announcing the winners for our cosplay competition now on the 19th, so everybody can keep their eyes peeled for that. And other than that, I would just like to say thank you from Offaly Libraries for joining us for the Offaly Libraries Comic Con 2021.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks very much, Jay, Nola, and Emily. Thanks a million.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Over and out. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.